Good morning, everyone. My first time in Wisconsin. It's absolutely beautiful here. I prayed for snow. I couldn't wait to see the snow again. I've never been to a high tea before, and I got like 6 of these to see which one would fit from Amazon, and I felt like a plucked chicken. I don't know, but the snow always makes me feel loved. I grew up in Montana, and it was always really beautiful snow there, and every time I'd go home, I'd pray it would snow, and my family would go, stop it! Even in different months, it would snow. And one of the unique things about snow is there's no two snowflakes alike, which is really awesome. Just like human beings, like God decided to take my 2 favorite things, which are human beings and snow, and not replicate them. They thought they found a snowflake that was the same last year, but they did not. So what a perfect setting, right, for Advent as a season of waiting. Mary once carried the hope of the world inside of her. When you think about that, you know, tiny and unformed and developing in her mother's womb, and just like how God still does that, right, in hidden places with the life in the womb. And at Life Connection, you know, we celebrate this same miracle of life every year, every single day, how they pour love into the families and into the babies. And it reminds us, Advent reminds us of small beginnings. And just like when Mary and Joseph, right, when they were pregnant, well, when Mary was pregnant, Joseph surely was not pregnant. But she was a brave young mother, and he was a very humble, supportive father. And then there was a child, Jesus, that changed everything. See, I believe in the pro-abundant life message so much from all my heart. And from a very young age, my father taught me about Imago Dei, how we're all made in the very image of God. You think about that. No matter who we are, everywhere you go, there is something in each human being that reflects the Father. He's the author of life, which means that every single one of us has the dignity and the hope and the humanity. So I grew up in Billings, Montana. I'm the youngest of 8 kids, and I was raised in an Irish Catholic family, what some may call the ideal family. We all went to Catholic schools, and we had dinner on the table every night at 6 p.m. sharp, because my mother was a miracle worker. And then for dessert, we all knelt in the living room and prayed the rosary. So that's the family I grew up in. And my dad gave me 2 rules in the 70s. Don't have sex before you're married, and don't be unequally yoked. I was 14. I didn't know what either of those things meant. It would have been really helpful advice if I knew. But imagine how scared I was for my family to find out that I was pregnant at 15, the very first time. And I guess they call that the luck of the Irish. I can remember standing in my big picture window like this, right? And I'm looking out of that big picture window, and it's the 70s, I have a smock top on with cherries on the pockets, and I'm feeling my little baby kick, and my dad is outside taking pictures of 2 of my pregnant sisters and my pregnant sister-in-law. And I'm thinking, I should be in that picture. And I had lots of hopes and dreams already for my baby, but I also hoped my dad wouldn't kill me. But he never laid a hand on me. So the first Advent candle is hope. And just like Mary stood facing that fear and destiny of her pregnancy, I stood there too, pregnant and afraid. And so do many, many other young women facing the fear of an unplanned pregnancy. But Advent reminds us that God enters our fear with hope. So I was nearly 6 months pregnant, and I'll never forget my mom saying, I'm going to tell Dad on the way home from the airport that you're pregnant. And so I did what any other responsible 15-year-old would do, and I called up my boyfriend. I said, come get me. And we went and hid in the station wagon in the church parking lot. And at least we kind of knew where to go. But I kept over the radio, I kept hearing my dad saying, a baby is a blessing, a baby is a blessing, a baby is a blessing. That's what gave me the courage to go home. So we had this really long driveway, and I walked up the driveway and I was just praying, and I put my hand on the doorknob and I did the sign of the cross. I was like, please God, let my daddy be asleep. But when I opened up the door, of course, there he sat in his green velvet chair, and he had his Coke bottle glasses on, and he was reading the Bible just like normal. And I just burst into tears. My dad walked over to me, and he put his arms around me. And he said, Mom said that you're going to have a baby. And all I ask, because we're too old to raise another child, all I ask is that you pray every day what's best for your baby, whether it's adoption or whether you parent with our help. And then he kissed me on the forehead and said, now, get to sleep. You have school in a couple of hours. But we never missed school. There was no snow days in our house. No way. And, you know, I think about how my parents believed deeply in the sanctity of human life. And it's never too soon to tell your kids about the sanctity of human life, so that when they get, hopefully never, into that situation, or their friends do, that they will already have the solid belief in the sanctity of human life. So my parents decided, my mom, she was a crisis counselor at a pregnancy center in the 70s, and so they decided that I should move away to Bozeman, Montana, to live with my sister if I was going to consider adoption. And the Bozeman area, if you have ever watched that show Yellowstone, like I have not, because I'm a scaredy cat, but my sister also volunteered at her local pregnancy center, answering phones back in the 70s. And so she took me to a pregnancy center, and there was like an older woman named Nell there, and she showed me all of the really beautiful families that were waiting for adoption, you know, the old photo books, and there was families standing there with big old hopeful smiles on their face in front of their house and their little white picket fence and their dog. And you know, even though I didn't choose adoption, it is such a noble option, and we really should be sharing more of our adoption stories. It really is an amazing thing, so sacrificial. So on September 1st in 1977, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. She had a head full of dark hair and little rosy lips, and I named her Erica Michelle after the soap opera star, Erica Kane. I was only a teenager. What did I know? Goodness sakes. So my father, he taught me what it truly means to be pro-abundant life, inspired by John 10:10, where it says that Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly. And when we model God's design, we exemplify the pro-life vision, where families are celebrated and children are always welcomed, with family always on the forefront. So this abundant life model is reflected again in the birth of Jesus. Right? Mary and Joseph, like so many today, they face that same fear and uncertainty. And when Mary was afraid, Gabriel came and said, do not be afraid. And when Joseph hesitated, Gabriel came again and said, do not be afraid. You're going to wed Mary and be a father to Jesus. And we need more Gabriels, more voices. We need more Josephs, more men embracing marriage and fatherhood with faith. And pregnancy resource centers advocate and have a unique window to evangelize, but we need the church to disciple the young women. And my life was far from easy. I was kicked out of my parochial school for having the baby. Adults said, you have your whole life ahead of you, you're going to ruin your future. My boyfriend got another girl pregnant, who sadly had an abortion. Her and her friends harassed me, followed me, physically fought me, all through high school. But no one tells a teenager that the hardest thing to recover from is the broken heart. So just months after my daughter was born, I did not learn my lesson. Same boyfriend, same thing. I was pregnant again. I hid this pregnancy as well. And I fought my boyfriend after catching him at the park with another girl. He was rolling around in the grass with another girl. And I fought him for 2 city blocks. And that night I went home. And in the silence of my bedroom, I went into labor, all alone. And then I went into the bathroom. And I was crying for my mom to wake up, but she couldn't hear me. And I lost my little boy in the middle of the night at just 22 weeks. And I'll never forget his tiny hands and his tiny feet. He was just so perfect, but too small. And the sorrow that followed was just unimaginable. But thank God that Life's Connection has a really rich ministry where they help women who have miscarried and stillbirth and pregnancy loss. It's so important so that they don't have to hold on to that pain unaddressed for decades. So this is what a baby looks like at 22 weeks, which is when I lost my little boy. And babies outside the womb are able to survive even a little bit younger than this. And I think about this heartbreak when I think about that 63% of abortions today are done during the do-it-yourself abortion pill. Girls and women are sent home to endure this trauma in their bathrooms, in their college campuses, all alone. And to think that they will also see, possibly, their developing baby. And there's a new study out that talks about how unchecked and unsafe this pill is, or 1 in 10 women, 1 in 10 teenagers will have a serious adverse event. But there is hope, because again, pregnancy centers like Life Connection offer APR, abortion pill reversal. And by using the natural hormone progesterone, between 64 and 68% of the pregnancies can be saved. Every single one of these babies is a miracle, and it's really cool when you see a woman that was so scared and she takes that first pill, and then she gets to see that the baby was actually saved. I mean, it's really, really beautiful to see. And we really need to keep contending for the FDA to put the restrictions back on the pill. You know, you can have a baby in your tubes, you can have blood type that will affect other pregnancies. And there's so many things that are just completely unchecked. But ultimately, there's no safe pill because they all end a life. So, funny thing did happen to me a couple months ago. I was on the airport going to Michigan, and I got flagged at the airport. And the guy says up on the screen, you know how you can see what's inside your bag, like, and there's this orange blob, and he's like, this is why we, pulled you over, is because of this orange blob. And he pulls this out, and he's like, what is this? And so he undoes it, and he goes, it's a baby! Really loud. And then he holds up the baby like Kunta Kinte, and he tells the guy over there that flagged me on TSA, and he said, it's a baby. And I said, yeah, I said, this is a baby at 22 weeks, and it's what you look like in your mother's womb. And I don't know what made me say this, but I said, and you know what's sad, is moms can and do have abortions, even later than this. And he said, well, I have some feelings about that. And I said, well, you and many others do, but thank God your mother did not. I said, I'm glad you're here. So you never know when you're gonna have a fetal development impromptu at the airport. Goodness. So becoming a mom was really my greatest joy and my greatest accomplishment. And if you notice, like every person in my story that helped me was at a pregnancy center. That's why I love all of you for being here today, because you give to an organization, a ministry, that really gets in there when women have lost hope and gives them that hope again. And it's my dream that every young girl will have the support like I did, but not everyone has parents like I do. My parents made sure I got to finish high school and get my baby on a schedule, and I already had like such a loving home, and they really modeled family, but not all parents are like mine. So years later, I faced another heartbreak. The picture here is the baby girl that I was pregnant with at 15, my Erica Michelle there. She's really smart. Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. And years later, I did face another heartbreak though. And I still remember the moment that I opened up an email from my daughter that totally changed my world. And my heart was pounding as I was reading those words. And I couldn't believe, what she'd been through. I was really unable to process what I was reading. I don't know if you've ever got shocking news, but I was really unable to process what I was reading. And then I just panicked and hit delete, as if deleting the email could erase the truth that my daughter had just shared with me, that she had had a secret teen abortion. And I called her immediately and I said, I read your email, I love you, I'm so sorry, we'll talk soon. And then I went up into my bedroom and I curled up in a fetal position on my bed and I just cried. Those, terrible gut-wrenching cries. She had written that she didn't want me to know because she knew that I would want the baby. And she's right. I wanted that baby when I read that email, and I still want that baby. I lost count of how many women I've helped with their labors. I helped with 12 of my own grandchildren. And I volunteered at Alpha Clinics for years, for decades now. And I think I'm a little bit addicted to babies. The babies running around here, their little soft cheeks and the smell and their little giggles and their dimply skin, but God, He never wastes our pain. And today, Erica and we serve in a ministry at my church for abortion healing, and it's called A Movement of Love. And through our journey, we recently co-wrote and published a book along with my pastor's wife. And it is a 12-week study called Redemptive Love, A Journey of Restoration After Abortion. And when you read it, anything smart in there came from my daughter. She's really, really smart. I had to tell her, you need to write this more for 6th grade level, because I don't know what you're talking about. Psychology and things. But this is what redemption looks like in my life, right? When you get to see women healed, it is another thing that's quite addictive. It's really awesome when we see people's lives redeemed and restored. And if any of you in this room have had an abortion, guilt, blame, and regret don't get the last word. God does. He's the one that gets the last word, and He stands ready and waiting with arms open wide, eager to restore you to true freedom. Erica now has a beautiful family. She's a social worker in child welfare, former client services director at PRC in Napa, and a grandmother herself. But stories like hers are becoming more and more common. 2/3 of post-abortive women say they would have chosen life if just one person had supported them. And 70% were attending church at the time, which is why we wanted to bring the healing into the church. These women and men are in our pews, and they are suffering in silence. Pregnancy resource centers do offer this healing. Yours does. But the church is uniquely positioned to disciple, to speak boldly. And if they don't step in, if we don't step in, the culture will, and they do. Abortion is one of Satan's greatest deceptions. It steals life, silences voices, destroys preborn children, and fractures families and relationships. But we're here to reclaim what was lost. And PRCs fight abortion with compassion, practical help, and life-giving alternatives. And I believe healed women are who will help end abortion. Our weapons remain the same, truth and love. And abortion is demonic. There's no other way to talk about it. But the impact that Life's Connection is making is not just saving lives, it's saving souls. And opening the door to those spiritual conversations is really, really important. Because together we can influence a culture so that abortion at any stage becomes unthinkable. So the second candle of Advent is peace. Not the peace with ease, but the peace of God with us. Even through suffering, loss, and chaos, I'm sure we can all agree that the world needs the Prince of Peace. The world needs Jesus. And I'm passionate about parental rights, if you could guess. In 25 states, preteens can leave their school to get an abortion, just like my daughter did, and schools can hide it from us parents. And when parents are cut out of the children's health decisions, we don't empower teens, we isolate them. So thank God that Wisconsin parental consent law, and please do everything you can to protect it. So a turning point in my journey is when I met a third 12-year-old girl pregnant in 1 month in California. That third girl, like at 12 years old, I'm thinking I was riding a banana seat bicycle. I said that the other day to a younger crowd and they didn't know what a banana seat bicycle was. I was like, you guys don't know what that is, too. I'm like, it's so fun. You can have someone on the back, someone on the handlebars. Three of you riding down the road. Don't know what they're missing. And her test was positive, so I shared with her my situation of being pregnant and young, and that I was once afraid as well. And there was a lot of tears, but there was also a lot of joy. She found out that she was 11 weeks pregnant, and that was really exciting because that's when your baby can smile and show expressions, and that's also in development when your baby can pee in the mother's womb, and that's what the high schoolers love to learn there for sure. But we prayed together, and then I felt like the worst person in the world because I had to call CPS and the police. But that's the only real way that people get help when they're in those situations. But we protect children at pregnancy centers, you know? We always call when they're that young. And that night after calling the police, I went home, and again, I cried out to God. And I said, God, how can I help? And about middle of the night, I felt this nudge to get up and start writing. Now, at the time, I'd never even written an article, ever. Like, I didn't read books. So I started writing, and I'm like, okay, well, I could just start with the birth of Jesus. That's a unplanned pregnancy, at least in Mary Joseph's eyes. But I began to write Choose Zoe, a story of unplanned parenthood and the case for life. And it was a book born out of that young girl, that 12-year-old girl, and every other young girl. And it's based on the word Zoe, for the Greek word for life, in John 10:10, where again it says, I have come that they may have Zoe, and have Zoe more abundantly. The word life is the God kind of life. It's not physical life, it's life with God, divine, eternal life. And I believe that that is what it takes us all to be able to get through the pregnancy center work. And Satan, he comes to destroy life, especially the unborn. He literally hates God's image bearers. Probably hates the snow. But choosing life brings endless peace and joy. And today, even the pro-life message is being watered down because many just focus on late-term abortion, opposing it. People wrestle also with the three most common exceptions: rape, incest, fetal abnormalities, anomalies, and life health of the mother. But here's the truth. Every single state with abortion bans, including Wisconsin, still includes medical emergency exceptions after 20 weeks to save the life or health of mother, which often means preterm delivery and not abortion. In Wisconsin, abortion is legal up to 21 weeks, 6 days of pregnancy, even though fetal pain is recognized at 20 weeks. And much research says that as early as 12 weeks gestation, that a baby can feel pain. The law in Wisconsin does not include any exceptions for rape or incest. But when it comes to exceptions, we must know where we stand before someone we love faces one of these situations. Scripture says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. It's simple. Jesus brings the blood, and we bring our stories. And sharing your stories is one of the most effective tools. If you feel like you don't really have a great story of your own, you do. But you can use other stories as well to help people to change hearts and minds. And it will really help people to move from being pro-life with exceptions to fully pro-life without compromise. See, when it comes to fetal abnormalities and anomalies or being incompatible with life diagnosis, we must stay strong. I remember my 5th pregnancy. So the doctors told me that I had an oblited ovum, which is an empty sac with no fetal matter and no heartbeat. And I just kept refusing this. Even on the ultrasound, I could see the misshapen sac with nothing in it. And I just told the doctors, like, I'm not having an abortion. I'm not doing this. And they're like, it's a DNC. It's not the same thing, and it's bad for your health if you don't, clean out the womb. And I just kept refusing it. And I remember walking out of the doctor's office, and I just flung that door open, and I said, God, you raised Lazarus from the dead. Now breathe life into my baby. And then I shut the door, and I was like, dang, I was kind of mean to God right there. But that's how I would talk to my dad. So they also told me that my baby had short femurs and a really large head and excess amniotic fluid. So they suspected brain damage, but didn't want to do the amnio that late in the game because it could put me into labor. So they wouldn't know how challenged she would be. And then they suspected dwarfism. So I went home to my kids and I told them, and we just decided that God would either perform a miracle or that we would simply love a small child. And my daughter Mary, she was born prematurely with no abnormalities. She did have hyaline membrane disease, and when they told me she might not live through the night, I'm thinking, you have no idea all the miracles that have happened so far. So thanks to medical advancements, they gave her the surfactant and her lungs were developed, and she's perfectly healthy today. And Christmas is also the story of a miracle child. My daughter Mary's story is a modern echo of that truth. And that God is still the God of miracles, still rescuing, still restoring, and still writing better endings than we could ever imagine. So this is Mary here. The 3rd candle of Advent is joy, real resilient joy. The Virgin Mary experienced both joy and hardship at the same time. And so do many mothers and fathers today. Yet God transforms even our heaviest moments into his audacious joy. Now my daughter Mary is a beautician, thank God. My oldest daughter is gray, and I don't know how that happened, but I don't know. But after her experience with twins, she is now studying to be a nurse. And Mary and Joseph, this is the happy family, not the holy family. I have a sister Mary and a brother Joseph. I never knew a Mary and a Joseph that were together. And so their first son, his middle name is Yesu, which is Jesus in Samoan. And I kid you not, they are really enjoying their happy little family. And Mary always gives me a card on Mother's Day, and she's like, thank you, Mom. Like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I said, no, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for God. And she said, but if you listen to the doctors, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this beautiful family. And, miracles and misdiagnosis do happen. But even if she had been born with a condition like dwarfism, I would not have loved her any less. So the bottom picture is me and my kids and their spouses and their kids. And the top one is me with my grandkids. So abortion impacts generations, but so does choosing life. And our future generations, they're counting on us. That's who we're fighting for. Every child in the womb, every vulnerable mother, and every family searching for hope. We are standing for the dignity of all human life, from fertilization to natural death. And today, by supporting Life's Connection, you have the chance to offer hope to a world that only offers fear. Back then, people told me you have your whole life ahead of you, you're going to ruin your future. But those hard days, they really built character in my life, and they made me strong to contend for other young women who are pregnant. And, also, I'm here. So if this is what a ruined woman looks like, I'm wearing it proud. My life is truly a testimony of how God can turn broken things, broken beginnings, into abundant generations. So the fourth candle of Advent represents the love of God. My life is full of love, but I do cherish most the love of God, the love that He had for me in my hardest times in life. And today I am truly blessed beyond measure. 5 kids, 5 bonus children, 13 grandkids, and a great granddaughter. She'll be 4 in January. She's sassy. My struggles really shaped me, not just as a mother, but I own a photography business. I'm an author, a speaker, an advocate, and I'm not saying it to boast, but I have gotten into some pretty heavy arguments in Berkeley, California, where women tell me that pregnancy is going to end somebody's, chances of success. And my children are thriving. Most have advanced degrees. 2 serve in the military. One's a social worker in child welfare. One's a pastor, and thank God, one's a beautician, on her way to becoming a nurse. But each one's making a really big impact in their community, and I could not be prouder. So, how many of you have grandkids? It's your time to brag. Whoop whoop! I call being a grandma like the abundant life on steroids. There's nothing like it, right? And you know the joy of watching that next generation bloom. So our abundant life and love approach is powerful because it's rooted in real love, the love of God and the love of family. And Jesus commands us to love our neighbor. And who's closer than the mother and the baby in the womb? So I also serve as an advocate for children who are rescued from trafficking and online sexual exploitation. Right now I'm connected with a safe home. It shelters 37 girls. They all come into the program at under 12 years old and under. The youngest one was just 18 months old. Yeah, let that sink in, right? Babies and toddlers are being abused and exploited. And not long ago, a friend messaged me from the ER, and it's really important for pregnancy centers to connect with the medical centers and things too. And so she knew that this girl needed help, and the girl asked for help. She had signs of being trafficked. She had head trauma. She was very underweight. She had no ID. She had 2 telephones. And then she had branding tattoos. He had put a brand on her that looked like, for sale, like that kind of a brand. And she was definitely dressed inappropriately for the weather. And she was clearly a victim of trafficking, and she was pregnant. So they have places that they take the women who have been sexually abused at hospitals or trafficked, but they don't know how to get them into a safe home. So this young lady, she came to our pregnancy clinic, and she had an ultrasound, and she saw her baby girl dancing around in the womb. And within days, like most girls do, she called her trafficker. And when I heard this, I just kind of went a little bit ballistic. And I knew I had to intervene, so I said, let me get on the phone with her, let me call her. And I told her about the little girls that are trafficked, that I know personally. And I told her that, if she goes back to him, that her and her child are in really serious, grave danger. And sometimes the trafficker allows the young lady to have one child, This child is like an anchor. It tethers her. It's also used as a pawn because if the woman wants to get out, he may say, I'm keeping the baby, things like that. But when I told her that the real truth is that also you will age out. What's happening in your life right now, she's only 20. I said, you've got about 20 more years, maybe, if you don't, die in this process. And I said, but that baby can be trafficked now for decades. And I said, you don't want this life for your baby girl. And you're strong enough to get away. And she did. And today, mother and baby are building a new life. And in January, I joined a rescue operation with the DOJ and the FBI and the Sheriff's Department in Sacramento. And I saw teens and young women barely clothed, like fishnet dresses that look like shirts. 9-inch heels, clear see-through heels, and they were sleep deprived, and they were malnourished, and they were afraid, and they were dehumanized. And I was able to pray with them, encourage them, and remind them of their worth. See, to traffickers and buyers, they were just commodities. But I saw something different. I saw people who were really worthy. They were made in God's image, and they were carrying purpose. And really surprised me is I saw law enforcement that didn't just carry badges, but they carried hearts of gold. They treated those young ladies and teens as they were daughters, because they are someone's daughters. And abortion, trafficking, infanticide, euthanasia, assisted suicide, they're not just social debates. They're profound moral and spiritual crises. And every abortion ends a life made in the image of God, and it leaves deep wounds for the hearts of families. The spiritual consequences of ending life ripples through generations. And we get to decide what kind of society we want to be. If the law is a teacher, then laws that permit unrestricted abortion or devalue human life are teaching our culture that life is disposable. And this is why we as believers can never stay silent. We advocate with truth and compassion, and we remind the world of something sacred, that every human life is precious, purposeful, and worthy of protection. Life's Connection services are up here on the screen. This pregnancy center stands as a light in a world of darkness, abortion, trafficking, exploitation, and despair. John 1:5 says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The Advent wreath shines brighter each week, and so must we. That 5th candle signifies Jesus' birth. It's placed right in the middle of the wreath and lit on Christmas Eve, the night that Jesus was born to the humble surroundings, yet his life changed the world. Pregnancy clinics remind us that every life, no matter how humble or unexpected, has immense value and purpose. And Isaiah 9:6 reminds us, for unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given. And every child, like Jesus, is a gift from God. And as we prepare for Christmas, we remember a young mother, a humble father, and a baby whose life changed everything. Jesus came into the world in vulnerability, unseen, tiny, and forming in his mother's womb. And every child you help at Life's Connection is a reminder of him. Every mother you support reflects Mary's courage. Every act of charity reflects Christ's love. And every story of healing proclaims the good news. And today, your generosity, all the things you've done here, it's such a blessing for me to see you all in there just giving your hard-earned money to benefit this. And your generosity can be the very thing that turns someone's life into Advent, a season to bring hope, love, joy, and peace to mothers and babies who desperately need it. And if you feel led to partner with this sacred mission, there are some giving envelopes on your table as well today. And I want to say Merry Christmas to all of you. And may the God who came as a child bless you richly as you give to others.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was beautiful. And the message that she gave is so true. All around. You hit on everything, all the services that we provide at Life's Connection. You hit on every one of them.